All right. Everyone, we are live. Welcome if you are watching the Everything Teams Phone Live podcast on LinkedIn dedicated to Microsoft Teams Phone. This is an exciting episode 24. We have a couple of special guests for you today. Yeah, there it is. A couple of special guests for you today, right from Microsoft. We've got Mr. Doug Kline, and we've got Mr. Jason Waite. Boom.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely, guys. And then you've got myself, Rick Garcia, G12 Communications, and
Brandon Bradley, G12 Communications. I kind of feel like I need to add G12 now that Doug's got Microsoft next to his name.
We could just put
that.
Everything.
Although I've got the logo. I've got the logo.
You've got the logo and the T-shirt. And we're pulling it together here. All right. Well, guys, this is an exciting show because we're not going to keep anyone constrained to any particular topic except that it's Teams Phone, right? That's what we're here for. We're going to talk about Teams Phone. You guys should probably tell us a little bit about yourselves. Now, I had slides for you guys both before because you have both joined us on separate occasions on Everything Teams Phone Live. But why don't you guys take a moment and tell us what you each do? I think that would help the audience understand who. Hey, there's Tom. All right. Welcome from the other side of the pond.
Don't you go first?
I tell you what, I bet Tom is, we should highlight his hello. Let's go.
There you go. Do it.
It's what, Friday evening for Tom. So he's going to make me jealous. He's probably got a beer in hand.
No, it's a glass of wine.
Maybe
he's
wine
in hand.
Yeah, maybe he's in the pub even.
All right, let's do the introductions. Who's going first? Was it Doug, Jason, that you suggested? Doug, we're putting you on the spot. Let's do it, buddy.
I don't know which side he's on for you, but yeah.
Am I putting me on the spot? Okay.
Uh-oh.
And he's not going first.
Yeah, I'm delayed with my video.
First.
I apologize if that's still happening. My name is Specialist here at Microsoft. Oh, am I cutting out?
Just a bit.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, you're back for the moment.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Oh my God, it's my computer, I guess. Hold on. All right, can you hear me now? Thumbs up.
We've got
Yes, thumbs up.
Okay, it sounds like I'm a little delayed here. So I'm going to shut down some programs in the meantime because I think that could be causing the problem. My computer just might be bogged down. So I'll start again. Doug Kline, Modern Work Technology Specialist here at Microsoft. Essentially, I'm a Teams guy. I talk about Teams. I have been a voice guy my whole career. I'm one of those old Nortel people that are still floating around out there. I spent 11 years at Nortel, got out of Nortel just before bankruptcy, shockingly, and had a chance to get into the partner community of Microsoft. And I've been doing a voice and messaging since then, and have been at Microsoft here for 4 years. So hopefully you heard all that okay, because my computer is being problematic. Okay, awesome.
We just heard no. No, I'm just kidding. No, we got it all. We got it all, Doug. We got it all. Jason, thank you very much, Doug. Jason, what do you do, my man?
Well, I do the same thing Doug does. And broadly speaking, we've had pretty similar experience just in terms of our focus on telephony, knowledge of the pre-VoIP telephony world. Came from two different vendor ecosystems, certainly, but what I love about Doug's experience and what I lean on personally, on occasion certainly, is his experience with earlier Microsoft Voice, the OCS, LCS, the Link, the Skype for Business stuff. Because at that time, that's when I was really bouncing around the Cisco ecosystem, trying to deploy Cisco Unified Communications to as many different offices and plants. And I worked for all kinds of different firms as a consultant. And so I was just bouncing all over the Southeast US at that time doing Cisco stuff. So I get here and Teams is all the rage, and Teams is cloud native, born in the cloud, lives in the cloud, is a full UCaaS solution. And having no real context for what came before, I lean on Doug quite a lot for that stuff. So my story is I think my story is pretty typical, right? Anybody who comes from a Cisco UC background probably has done the things I've done. Just did a lot of design and build in that world. And so pleased to be in this one, to say the least.
Oh,
Now,
I can imagine.
And
It's like,
I will jump in there. I'm going to jump in there and say that
do it.
I always like to see somebody from that side come over to our side, because that was always back in the on-prem era of Microsoft Voice. That was always the behemoth that we were up against with Cisco.
Mm-hmm.
So it's nice to see somebody on our side now.
Yeah, they make for fun conversations. You can always tell when you're talking to a longtime Cisco shop. And I mentioned it, I think, last time we spoke here on Everything Teams Phone Live about some of the political pressures and sort of the disparate teams that deal with voice when it was very infrastructure based. Obviously, Cisco still kind of dominates in that infrastructure routing and switching kind of space. And so you get a certain set of ideas, you get a certain sense for the way an organization is trying to achieve cohesion between, an infrastructure team focused on networking, and that's sort of how they came to voice, versus the systems team that tends to be very Microsoft centric. And sometimes they want voice, and sometimes maybe they don't want voice. And so it's a good time. You have to really read between the lines a lot of the time with these these customers coming from Cisco, but it's always a productive conversation. It's always a positive conversation. That's the thing I try to make of every call with any customers is even if you don't necessarily choose to move forward with a Teams phone solution, and I've got to tell you, it's been great. A lot of folks really are making that decision. I would say most are making that decision. But even if it doesn't go that way, you have a good conversation. You paint the picture of Teams phone as best you can. You map the use cases. You connect with people. You learn what they're dealing with, and you try to solve problems. I think that's ultimately what we're all doing. It's fun, again, reading between the lines with the Cisco shops.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, you get the opportunity to see, having both your backgrounds, right? You get the opportunity to see people that were in your, you were in their shoes, years before. You understand exactly what they're dealing with, right? You can almost feel that fight against the machine that they're giving you at the time, where they're putting up roadblocks potentially, right? On why maybe Teams doesn't do what Cisco can do, as an example. But there's two things that stuck with me on your previous visit, and this is for Jason. Two things that stuck with me. Number one is, if you're hosting your own infrastructure, what you're saying is, and not to be sarcastic or anything, but what you're saying is that you can do it better than Microsoft. Okay. So that's one thing that stuck with me. The other thing that stuck with me, and Brandon, why don't you say, this is a pop quiz for Brandon.
Oh, good grief. He always puts me on the spot.
The other thing that you said, Jason, was I asked a really direct question, and the really direct question was, what can Cisco do that Teams phone cannot? And Brandon, what was the answer? Do you recall?
Yeah, I'm going to get it wrong, because I think the way Jason answered was, if I remember correctly, it was almost like in a double negative sense, where, it's like Teams can essentially do it all, but I cannot remember how you said it.
I want to restate it for you just a little bit if I can, because the real answer that I think I gave to you is there's nothing on a practical basis that Teams can't do.
Yeah, that's what
it may take a different approach. It may, and that's always the first topic I try to broach. I know Doug does this too, because I've been in a lot of Doug's calls. That's how I got exposure to some of the ways these conversations can go. And it's an identity-based voice solution. That's the biggest contrast when you're coming from the world I came from. Everything was dominated by dial string, but that makes things look different. That makes things feel different. And you mentioned something kind of funny a few minutes ago. I put up some of those same roadblocks that I encounter now with these customers coming from Cisco, and try to say, well, you can't handle multiple line appearances. That's always sort of the example I use, right? And then we have to go deeper into the identity conversation, because by the end of that conversation, you understand that multiple line appearances aren't the only way to accomplish the practical mechanisms and the logic that you can that you need in a lot of cases for a telephony infrastructure. It just looks different. It just doesn't. We don't call it multiple line appearances necessarily. You're not attaching a line on a phone. It just doesn't really work that way. And frankly, it's a positive. And so a lot of the time you can wrap it into a positive conversation that says, well, what are you trying to accomplish? go through the details of that and say, well, here's what it looks like in our ecosystem if you do that. And that's what I do. I'll jump into my demo machine. I've got a Teams client. I've got a couple of different call delegation relationships configured. And so I can make those calls and receive those calls as those other users, but it's their actual Teams identity that you're dealing with, not all these different, phone lines with line text labels that could be the phone number, it could be a name, it could be who knows what. You're just dealing with identities. It's brilliant. Yeah. So it's a positive. The real answer, I think, that I should have given you in truth is fax. We just kind of don't touch fax. We don't really feel like we have much to add to fax. Personally, and gentlemen, I'm sure that you feel similar to this. I don't have much interest in fax.
So here's what's interesting, and you got Tom listening. So what's interesting is in going through over the weekend, I think Tom and I were on a string or a questionnaire, and the questionnaire was something like, what differentiates some of these Operator Connect organizations, right? And what are some of the differentiators out in the space, for organizations that are choosing Operator Connect, and in Europe. I don't think fax is a deal at all in Europe. Like, I don't think anybody it's like, I just saw a show and I can't remember. He's like, yeah, we've got one. It's like down the street at some pub or whatever. Right. And it's like, 3 blocks away and they've got one. They think it still works. Not quite sure. Right. And so that's how I think Europe has handled fax. Whereas in North America, right, fax is very prevalent in healthcare, in government, and education. Right.
It's still a multi-billion-dollar industry in the United States. It's huge.
Yeah. So being able to handle or include in your solution faxing is important. There's a lot of those little things though that you can add that are, let's take a step back here from a context perspective, gentlemen. Who do you guys build solutions for? I think that's helpful for the listeners out there. Who do you build solutions for? Your typical client.
I'm gonna let Doug answer the meat of this. I think if you're talking about verticals, we do kind of span. A lot of us span several different verticals. My focus tends to be in medical and legal, which is exactly what we just talked about. That's where you still see it. So I run into fax like a brick wall, just all the time, and you can't get past it. I kind of want to hand the ball to Doug here because I think Doug has some interesting views around, or at least experience around the power that some of these individuals have. Healthcare, doctors have a lot of power. Law firms, lawyers have a lot of power. So even if it's not necessary, and a lot of them will say that they have to maintain fax, right? We have to. Regulatory requirements say that we have to. That can lead us into some arguments. So I try to avoid that a good bit. But the point is, a lot of these customers have the power to just say, we're just going to keep doing faxing, even if they don't really need to. What do you think?
So Doug, what's the size, Doug? So answer his question, but what's the size of customers that you typically handle? Like from a user count perspective, who are you building solutions for?
Oh, you name it. I've helped customers as small as 20 people, and I've helped customers as large as throughout my career.
Well, here teams,
but teams. Okay, through teams. The part of the company that Jason and I are in, our sweet spot is probably the 200 to 500 user mark. That's probably where we spend most of our time. But I've talked to customers that are in the. One comes to mind that they had about 20,000 people. So, when I talk to customers, and you bring up the fax thing, and I focus a bit on manufacturing, and fax is very prevalent in manufacturing. And I always start with kind of the generic pitch of like, well, Microsoft always viewed fax as a messaging solution. So that really ties to Exchange, not to Teams, right? And oh, by the way, back in Server 2010, we ended that, right? Go to eFax. Microsoft feels that fax is eFax, right? Or the electronic fax solution. That's what it's intended to be, right? And if you still need a fax machine somewhere, okay, let's talk about, getting some type of analog line to it to do what you need to do, right? But it is definitely in the manufacturing world that I talk a lot with the fax machines kind of dying out. The approach that I always take, and this is going to be kind of a spin on what Jason was talking about, is we hear this all the time from customers. We need to handle our voice solution this way. Well, why? Well, that's just how we've always done it. And so I always kind of try to convince customers, you're thinking about a new solution. Maybe it's time to think about the way you're doing stuff, right? And God bless America. Here we are. We just had the 4th of July, right? God bless America. America's great with adapting new technology, but at the same time, we also have this legacy mindset. And if something works, don't change it, right? Yeah. And I think we have seen the traditional approach to voice has always been, well, first things, you got to put a phone on the desk. Put a phone on the desk. Get a line to the phone. Get dial tone to the phone. And Microsoft's approach is, well, forget the phone. You can use a phone if you want, or you can use a headset. It's about getting voice to the person and getting communication to the person. And so what Jason was saying is how it's an identity-based or identity-focused solution. Well, isn't that what communication is? It's focusing on the person and get the communication to the person in the best way possible for them. And that's kind of the approach I take when you're talking at all about Teams or any type of communication platform at this point. Yeah. Sorry, I went on a bit of a tangent there, but
no, that's great. I think that's great because I think it's important to give the listeners like, okay, let's give them some context. You're building solutions for, 20, 200, 500, 1,000, probably more, multi-thousand users at a time. So you've seen, Cisco, you've seen Mitels, you've seen the solutions that organizations are coming off of, and you've seen the organizations proliferate in a new way because they've adapted something different. That user-based identity is completely different than an on-prem solution. And let's face it, I think there's still 60% of on-prem solutions still out there or is it 60% of the businesses out there are still on on-prem solutions? Albeit I think the turnover now is probably speeding up, right? Because as some of these things fall off of maintenance and things like that, people are definitely looking at shrinking their tech stack, right? Bringing all the solutions together. And this whole notion of productivity, when someone pitches productivity in an organization, a tech organization, and I'll use Microsoft or anybody, when they pitch productivity, I've always called BS on it myself. Like I always go, okay, great. It's like, is that real value that I'm going to see in productivity? Is that real? Is it real? And I've never believed it to be real, except in the Microsoft Teams phone space. Like, and I'm in this space, so I see it and I understand it. And so for listeners out there, organizations, whether you're a business decision maker or an IT person or an account manager at Microsoft, the actual productivity that people can realize in a communication platform like Microsoft Teams is astonishing today. I think about when we managed G12 as a telco provider. And I can tell you, like in 2015, we were a Slack shop and Slack, and I forget whatever their technology we used, but there was no video attached to it all. So we were all on conference calls, right? We were all on conference calls. So I had a star phone on my desk because I was cool, right? I had a star phone right on my desk. So, and you couldn't really connect with people. You couldn't really connect. I mean, you didn't know. And this is just from a management perspective. Is that person working? They're making the conference call and then they're out. You know what I mean? And so I can't imagine running a business now without the direct connectivity that you have with video, with chat, with voice, and having it all at my fingertips on mobile device and on my PC. Right. So it's like the productivity, I mean, is 10, not to use a Grant Cardone reference, but it's like 10x, right? It's like, it's the productivity is astonishing. And now the tools that Teams is coming out with, I mean, when you see Azure Communication Services and the power of ACS where you can externalize some of the Teams tools and have them brought into a Teams interface, there's so many different things. What are some cool productivity changes that you have seen when you've deployed Teams Phone for some of your organizations?
Well, I think another really significant shift is that Teams is already doing out of the box, before we even talk about Teams Phone licensing, what PBXs were providing 25 years ago, right? The established telephony in your organization piece. Being able to call other users in your org and even outside your org, right? With sort of B2B calling, search externally, that kind of stuff, right? That's something that people used to have to pay for. That costs a lot of money. And if we go way back, right, to switchboard operators and then private branch exchanges and what the way that all started, you have a switchboard operator essentially for your own internal communications. None of that's necessary anymore. And with Teams, I can't say that Teams is free, but essentially the basic Teams license is included with just so many different license packages at Microsoft. We're kind of giving that part away. And so even in the IPPBX world from whence I came, a couple of years ago or whatever, that wasn't really true. That you needed that ticket to entry. There was still a cost to that. And then add to all of what I just said, the fact that we're wrapping those communications that are available out of the box into the pane of glass that is Teams, where all of the other productivity features live. That's where you start to see validity in that. Because I run into this like a wall sometimes. There are skeptics, right? Oh, the productivity gains. Yeah, don't even count those. That doesn't factor into it. Just count the, I want to know circuit costs. I want to know, they want all the hard costs for it, right? And so the total cost of ownership conversation sometimes can get tricky, but by the end of the conversation, you can pull up these tools like the Forrester Total Economic Impact studies and all these different resources, and you can kind of prove it. You can draw these lines and show, the customer, this is what we're talking about. No, you don't have to deploy that. No, you don't have to pay for that to actually just get basic communications going. It's plugged right into Exchange Online. The voicemail is just sort of present. All these different pieces actually paint the picture. I mean, we can really bear it out.
Jason, I think that's a really cool point you just made, because I don't think even me sitting here, knowing what Teams can do, knowing, how flexible and how big just the Teams ecosystem is, I don't sit here and think about Teams as an out of a box deployment as a PBX. And I'm really intrigued by that comment, because, that maybe even for me is going to help change my conversation with our clients of, when you're talking about that empathy towards, we've experienced it, right? Whether Cisco or Avaya or Mitel or whoever, we've been there and we know how hard it is to, change the way we think about things. But I think that's an interesting and cool perspective of, hey, you actually already have a PBX sitting here. You just don't even realize that how you're using it is identity driven, and yet
yes,
it's a PBX at the end of the day. That's a cool thought. I'm gonna steal that one.
It does what a PBX is supposed to do, right? Like that's exactly what it was meant to do, and it's already there out of the box. That's interesting. That is.
Doug, I don't know what your experience is with this particular part of the conversation, because that's how I lean into it with the Cisco folks, right? I'll identify voicemail as something that's already built in and just ready to go. And that's a big deal, because syncing identities over to Unity Connection and then bolting on a phone number, it's pretty clunky. But then B2B calling with Expressway, the infrastructure you had to have to enable that in the Cisco world, it's considerable. And the design complexity of that particular application, you have to have an Expressway C and an Expressway E, and firewall traversal has to work all these specific ways. It's a nightmare and a half. And so when we talk about real world features, real communication tools that this lights up for you, before you even get to Teams Phone, you can get ahead of the conversation in a lot of ways by focusing on those elements, all those practical elements, connect those calls to the people. It's just, it's a game changer.
For sure. It's often, when I talk to customers, first off, you mentioned the voicemail thing. So many customers don't realize that every single user with Teams, the included, or what we call the seeded version of Teams with Microsoft 365, has voicemail. Like if you want to peer-to-peer call each other all day long, you've got voicemail. And that was always something you had to pay for in the past, and we bring it to the product. I think a lot of times customers, once they start to realize the inherent stuff that's already there, they start to just kind of say, well, why don't I just give somebody my phone number? And I think the productivity savings is often driven by the end user, because I have talked to customers over the years where they get users saying, wow, they love Teams. They're doing meetings. They're doing all this stuff and chat and blah, 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 and collaborating on stuff. Can I just get my phone number in here? Can't you just make it so I don't have to, have this external phone device on my desk? And, and then they love the fact that, and this used to be my pitch back in the Link and Skype days, was let the user decide how they want to communicate when they want to. If they want to do it on their mobile device, fantastic. Let them do it on mobile. If they want to do it on their personal tablet, their iPad, they want to do it on their work computer, if they have a personal computer. I mean, that's the other thing that is a lot of times viewed differently. The kind of the old phone people didn't think of things that way. Wait a minute, you're only supposed to get dial tone somewhere, not anywhere the user wants it. And I think that element, and of course we're in this hybrid world now, and hybrid's a buzzword, and let people work the way they want, where they want, and all this stuff. That is what's driving productivity. And how I know that organizations are seeing the increase in productivity is they're coming back and talking to us saying, hey, my users want more. What aren't they doing in Teams that they can, or that they're not aware of? And then it becomes the discussions of the Power Platform. And of course, Copilot's going to open up a whole other, rainbow of discussion, right? So it's, there's no doubt organizations are seeing the benefit. Users are seeing the benefit. Users love it. They're really going to love the new client when that gets pushed out, right?
What's that, GA? I think I saw Tom say that was GA'd for October of this year. Is that right? Mm-hmm. So just around the corner.
Yeah. So I think, and the development just keeps going, right? I think we talked about this the last time when I spoke to you guys. Microsoft likes to pitch, we develop 300 features per year, feature enhancements for Teams, new or feature enhancements. And I think last year we did 450, right? It's just going to continue to evolve. It's just going to continue to get stronger and just be more and more just the focus point of a user's productivity day.
Let's talk. I'm gonna state something about productivity, and then I want to bring it back to kind of the ecosystem, because from a productivity perspective, the Forrester Economic Impact Report kind of measured the productivity in the time saved by doing a task. So if I'm checking my voicemail, no longer do I have to dial into my voicemail and check my voicemail. I can read my voicemail, and that saves me a minute. Right. And so you look at all the different components that you save. So if you have 100 employees and each employee with just a simple task is saving, 2 minutes times 3 different tasks times 5 days a week, right? You get a minute value, and then assigned a basic salary to that person. And then you calculate their value across a month. And what does that look like? Yeah. Right. So that's kind of how Forrester actually broke it down, so that you can see there is real productivity gains in using a single pane solution in Microsoft Teams. Now, it could be any single pane solution, but nothing that brings it all together like Microsoft Teams does. So, and then let's fast forward now to this ecosystem, Doug, to what you're talking about. Do you guys see an environment I see Teams as the next sort of business operating system, right? Do you guys see Teams as kind of the what Android was to mobile devices, or what the iPhone is to mobile devices as well? Is because I see the different apps, and I don't know that everyone pays attention to the different apps that are sitting in the Microsoft sort of Teams store, if you will, already, right? And so the productivity gains when you start to embed your daily work life into tools that you use, right? I don't see a lot of that just yet, but I feel like that's coming. Do you guys see that? Do you guys kind of think about that and run through that with some clients?
So my take on that, and I'll let Jason jump in after. My take is right now, security and the concern for security is top. Every organization is absolutely concerned. How do we keep our people productive? But how do we ensure that data is secure? And so when you start to have those certified applications that are inside the Teams store that people can put inside the app, that starts to eliminate the risk of the ghost IT stuff, right? People just downloading applications and putting them on. I think, to your point, I think the productivity world is going to be even more and more focused on Teams. I think it's already at the point where people spend most of their time looking at the Teams client today. I also think the roadmap of cloud operating systems like Windows 365 is going to continue to grow, and it's going to be driven by security, right? Because every organization knows this. The biggest risk to any organization when it comes to security is the human being. And humans make mistakes, and they click on things they shouldn't, or they download stuff they shouldn't. And so the more you can provide an experience into a single pane of glass to give them what they need to do, number one, it'll continue to make them more and more productive. but I also think it's going to add that layer of security that organizations need to think about.
Yeah, that's a fantastic point. The other side of the coin, Doug and I both focus on teams and productivity and collab. The other side of the TS coin is security, compliance, identity, right? Those folks spend so much time talking about attack surface reduction. I hear it all the time. And there's all kinds of very highly demanded and highly frequently discussed buzzwords like that. But truly, it does collapse your attack surface, right? You have this one application that's sort of your window to everything. And what I always tell customers is, this is the window to Microsoft Online. Like, this is the lens through which you can sort of view and access all these services. I love that you brought up Power Automate earlier, Doug, because I think it's the most underappreciated. I think I said this actually last time I was on here. Underappreciated solution that you can leverage in Microsoft Online. But Power Automate interacts with you in Teams, right? It's just the window to consume the services in Microsoft Online, and it continues to become more and more that way. I mean, it's still going up that hill, right, where everything is being brought over into Teams. That's what Viva is all about. And I don't. It's funny, every time we talk about a quantity of features or a quantity of improvements, the sum 450, that's staggering to me. And it's accelerating, if anything, right? Viva's coming over. We've had the enhancements of Teams Premium to really build Webinar into a more competitive and more compelling product. A lot of customers are excited about that, but that's what Teams is. It is the window to productivity, collaboration, communication.
So I'm gonna elaborate just a little bit too. So let's talk Power Automate for just a second. But what I want to say is I'm a business, and like I don't care to consume more Microsoft products, right? That's not my goal. My goal is to run my business in a more efficient way, right? So what I want to ask is, how can Power Automate improve my business? What is it going to do for my business? Let's say I'm a business owner that doesn't know anything about Power Automate or some of the Microsoft services that can do this and do that. What is it? Give me a real world example for Power Automate and how Power Automate has been deployed. I see the big smile, so there's a lot of them, but
so Power Automate's a workflow tool. That's all it is. It's the Power Suite for anybody who's listening who's not familiar. So that's Power Automate, Power BI, Power Apps, Power Virtual Agent. They all put the word power in the front, right? But these are Microsoft's low code, no code approach to developing tool sets, right? Power Automate used to be called Flow, right? We still call them flows, right? We will literally go out and build flows specifically around, a workflow that we're trying to enhance. Sorry, my computer just went to sleep there for a second. I hope I didn't lose you.
No, we got you.
So essentially, okay, awesome. So essentially what you're doing is you can now automate tasks, and I've talked to customers, and it can be a challenge for them when you ask them, what are the mundane tasks that your people are doing that is a time suck for them and it's not efficient, right? And it could be something as simple as when a form comes in, somebody has to catalog the information on the form, enter it into a database, and then once that's entered in, they have to let somebody else know that database has been populated or this order has been processed or whatever. And it's all those human steps that organizations often do, and people become so used to doing them, you don't even think about that. Well, it's just part of my job. Like when I get this in, I collect this information, or I get this email, I have this information, populate it here, let somebody know it's been entered. Power Automate can automate those steps, and then you can really take it to the next level when you start to talk about things like SharePoint syntax, right? Which is now the ability to use AI learning to scan documents to get the information off of the documents so that can be cataloged. Once cataloged, that cataloging can automatically trigger a workflow, a Power Automate flow, that can then notify people or populate other systems or, push data, pull data. I mean, essentially it's endless what it can do. And so the idea is now you don't have to have two things, the risk of human error, and it happens, right? Or you just don't have to have human intervention in the mix. You could have this system kind of work down through the simplest of things, like when an email comes in. I used to do this, actually, I'll tell you a story. I'm going to go off on a tangent again. But
do it.
When I hired out at Microsoft, one of the first things, I obviously knew the team stuff and all the productivity, but I didn't really know Power Automate. So I kind of spent some time learning it. And one of the first flows that I wrote was something as simple as when my boss sends me an email, I get a notification on my phone. And so my boss, after several months, he literally on one of our one-on-ones, he goes, I got to be honest, you are the most responsive person I've ever worked with. And I'm like, oh, wow. Oh, by the way, let me let you a little secret. Every time every time you send me an email, I get a little message on my watch saying, hey, such and such just messaged you, and I grab my phone and respond. And he goes, oh, so you're cheating? And I said, no, I'm using the tech to make it more efficient. But think about something like that, like a manager that wants an answer to something that maybe is used to waiting. Well, let's take a step back. Is used to just walking out of his office, walking over to somebody's desk and saying, hey, I need this data. Well, you can't do that now because guess what? People are hybrid.
Yeah.
So then you can IM them on Teams. Well, okay, but if they're in a call or something or whatever, or let's say they're not at their computer, it's after hours or something like that. But you start to do things like notify them where their phone will ding and maybe one of these wearables dings and guess what? They get the response. So it's the little things like that that really just drive these mundane tasks, get them away from the user, have the system management, and ultimately increase productivity and responsiveness.
I love it. Jason, since you're in the... Oh, go ahead, Brandon. Sorry. Go ahead,
I was going to say, bring it full circle back to our comment about electronic fax. Like there's a whole use case there, right? If you're going to integrate a faxing solution that takes maybe it's a actual PSTN call, converts that fax into a PDF, it's maybe SharePoint, then back to your use case, Doug, that you were talking about, where you could take that fax document and scan it, screen it, parse it, and push that data where it needs to go. Like that's huge productivity gains.
Sure. So I'm gonna give you a real world. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Doug.
I was just gonna say, one of the reasons I don't think, to Jason's point, that the Power Platform hasn't been, it's often overlooked, is while it's very easy to set up flow, you do have to kind of think like a computer, right? You have to, and the average user doesn't think like a computer. They think like a human being, right? We don't think in like linear steps to do everything. And so I think sometimes people, when they do dabble with it, unless they use a template, they can often get kind of frustrated quickly. Copilot is going to resolve that.
It is. And real quick here, just to add to it, everybody understands that all these individual mechanisms exist. They understand that you can OCR a PDF, right? So that you can extract text from it, or even OCR like photos and stuff. But still, they understand that you could, I don't know, automatically move a file into SharePoint or something. And they know that you can automatically get notifications when these things happen, but combining them all together in a flow where it's all automated and it all happens automagically. That's the piece that, to Doug's point, it's hard to put that together. And then he gave the last part that I was going to mention, right? These mechanisms can be a little complicated. So if you want to trigger a flow based on when an email arrives in an inbox, then you have to go, read a calendar and get objects off a calendar and pull information out of those calendar objects. And you want to do something with that information. Some of these mechanisms can be a little difficult to really wrap your brain around unless you've just done it a whole bunch. And so then Copilot, right? Copilot, describe what you want it to do. And if you can figure out a way, a good way to describe it in detail, it'll build you some crazy flows right there. So that's going to change everything. I think it's going to give businesses access to productivity gains that they could only really envision in their minds before.
And that's where, like, the translation, right? That's like the translation from kind of the human thinking to tech, right? It's like to my tech stack, right? So that's what it'll be. I think, because you could, like you said, the standalone tools are there. You can go and do that. You can go extract this. You can go read this. You can go, create something with this information here, but pulling it all together so that I know what I want in my head. How do I make this happen? And being able to pull all that together. One real world experience, I'll give you that. I was talking to a pretty large law firm the other day, and I talked about how they gain new clients. Well, every time a law firm has a new client, and Jason, if legal is your one of your verticals you're heavy in, that they have to sit there and they have to go run a what was they'll get your information. They'll go take a look and make sure that they don't have any sort of competing data. I forget what it's called. oh, it's going to kill me now. But they'll go through their records and go make sure that, let's say it's if it's a divorce as an example, conflict of interest. They'll run a quick, they'll run a conflict of interest check, right? So you fill out a form. Okay. You get your information, and then someone goes and checks their records and, goes and pulls your information, and they'll do it. All that is going to be automated. Like, that's going to be automated. You can go create a workflow to go to your database of existing clients to make sure there's no conflict there, to go do a background search on an existing client or on this new potential client, right? If they're checking for any existing suits or anything like that, right? And they can present that it's okay to deal with this client, like, instantly, right? Instantly, you'll be able to determine, okay, this person that's asking me a question, I no longer have to wait to support this person. I can go support this person. So what does that do for the business? That gives them it shrinks, I'll call it their time to revenue. It shrinks their time to revenue, right? For new clients. So all of a sudden now, if you actually were a law firm that did any sort of marketing and your time to revenue is decreased by days, right? There's a big opportunity for a law firm to really capitalize on productivity. So I thought that was a cool real world experience that we had to chat about.
It's like the tech version of a credit check. You get your credit checked instantly.
Yeah, no, it is. And you mentioned another element in there that I actually hadn't really introduced yet, as I gave an example, which is a DB dip, right? You want to use a connector, parse a database for certain elements. I mean, that adds this whole other layer, because I always present Flow as something that has access to all these little pockets of Microsoft Online functionality. It can parse Exchange and SharePoint and Teams and all these different sources, right? But you start to add the layers of these sort of connectors and what those connectors can introduce into that equation, and it blows up. So yeah, I appreciate the mention there of that database read operation there.
Yeah, and it even another use case, even in a G12 perspective, is we even connect that to big server systems like Linux driven operating systems, where we're actually triggering events out of syslogs and debug logs, where we're pulling that data in our case, we pull it right into Teams to alert us, hey, you've got a problem, and then we can take action from that card that pops up. Do I need to restart the Apache services? Do I need to? And so I can literally, and I'll go back to Tom, I can have wine on the go, because that's what you guys can't see his comment, but he's got wine on the go. Maybe he gets that alert on his phone and he goes, oh no, I need to restart this Apache service, right? He can just take action right from his mobile phone, from within Teams, done. Don't have to go find a computer, don't have to log in, don't have to, just boom, automated and done.
Well, there's another example, right? It's not just, hey, it'll ping you in Teams because this event happened. And I'll reference something that actually Doug built for us on the team. Not only does it say, hey, you have a call coming up, there are all these buttons that you can use and interact with to do different things, to jump into that system. If you want to do that restart, maybe you could do that because you built a button in that will really just lead you directly to the watering hole there to accomplish the work you need to actually get done. And so if I want to see, customer information for a call that I have coming up because of that thing Doug built, it's just right there on a button. So it's more than just like, hey, ping yourself when you need to know important information. It's like you can prepare for all kinds of different scenarios in that function.
Yeah, I have and I'll just finish with this. I have in my mind, if I do the same task 3 times, then I'm not efficient anymore. That's how I view it. If I have to do the same exact thing more than 3 times, and usually if you do it 3 times, you're probably doing it 300 times, right? Then it should be automated, right? Because it's just manual steps. Let the system do it for me and just give me the output that I'm looking for. That's kind of how I look at it.
Oh, see, that's cool. I mean, that is interesting to look at. So if you do it 3 times, I mean, and you're looking, you're automatically thinking, how can I automate this with my set of tools? I think that's what's interesting. Like, as you start to work with businesses and you start to, pull tasks into a solution, and you start to get the organization thinking about, how can I use this? Right? If you start, you shed some light on what an organization can do with just a few things. I mean, that's a simple one the whole checking, the conflict of interest, right, for a law firm. But think about the hundreds and potentially thousands of tasks an organization does to do their business, right? And how you can completely automate it. I mean, look, Ollie just kind of commented on what Brandon said. In combination with adaptive cards is very powerful. Now, just to explain to what if people are out there listening, adaptive cards are those Teams cards that pop up and let you know that you've got a notification for this, you've got a notification for that, right? You've got a new voicemail, whatever the notification may be. These adaptive cards, you can configure these adaptive cards to give you information from other systems
and take action on that information.
Yep.
Right.
Not just be notified like what Jason said earlier, but to actually then program in, hey, do you want to do something with this information?
So that's, I mean, again, you think about businesses and you get them thinking about the processes that they are the tasks they're doing on a daily. You start to really open up their imagination. And that's what it's like. You have to get there with an organization first, right? You have to get that person to think about that. It's like when we first introduced our texting and we said, you can do this with text, you can do that with text. And then people started to go, oh, wow. Like we can do this with text. Oh, we can offload this communication to text and create a more direct channel for our organization, right? There's different things. Your imagination starts to run wild, how you can then serve your customer better. Because what is it coming? I mean, what a business is selling services or products, right? And it's all about a customer journey. And this customer journey piece is like the holy grail of, if you get this customer journey piece right, the idea is that more customers will come to your business, you create more jobs, you create more opportunity, you create a bigger business, et cetera. All those things kind of, make a business, they make the economy turn. All sorts of great things happen because of that. But ultimately, it's getting that organization, that customer journey, right, to see the opportunity in that customer journey piece. And there's organizations like Luware, who's on the call right now, Ollie, hello, creating all sorts of, automation opportunities or creating that customer journey, right, creating a better customer journey. So it's pretty exciting to see the tools that are available to us today. And it just blows my mind that it's like, this is why we do this show. It's like, how do we get the word out that this is capable for a business? And then when you've been in the business for a long time, you guys have been in the PBX business for a long time, and you see something working so elegantly throughout an organization and what it can do, you just get so excited. Like you jump up and down. Like that's what we're doing. This is our version of jumping up and down, getting on LinkedIn and having a discussion. Brandon, you had a question on virtual agents. I'll get off of that now and go.
I did I? I love how he's like, here, let's make him talk about this. I don't even know where we're going with that. I actually want to come back to a comment made earlier, and I think it was, I can't remember if it was you, Doug, or Jason, maybe, talking about Copilot.
Somebody who was bald,
Yeah. Well, I'm about to join. So, talking about, how Copilot is going to change the user's ability to automate things just by being descriptive. And there, a thought kind of hit me that, Rick, you talking about a law office that may not have a big IT staff, may not have a development staff, may not have the expertise. And so going back to Doug talking about repetition of how many people out there are living repetitive tasks on the job and they hate it, but they just think, I got to do it. And the thing that kind of strikes interest in my mind around Copilot is how it's going to open that door for the common user, the person who's never had development experience, maybe they have a development staff, but they feel like my voice won't be heard, or I don't even know who the developers are, so I don't even know how to go ask for this. Where now you're going to present Copilot and potentially open that up to an end user to go simplify their own life. And not only is that productivity saved in their life, it's saved in staffing, because now developers aren't pausing what they're maybe doing, or you're not going out and contracting maybe an MSP to help you with this. It's like, it's really going to shift the way industry looks at productivity.
Copilot has created a new type of engineer. I think that's really what we're saying. Prompt engineering is a thing, right? If you can describe what you want to do sufficiently, the sky's the limit. And that's just a power that we never had before. I've often lamented throughout my career that I didn't learn X or Y coding language, or something that really takes quite a bit of time to learn and acquire any sort of skill and expertise in. It just changes the game. Prompt engineering is now a pretty big focus, and if it's not, it's about to be, right? Because how well can you describe what you want to accomplish?
Yeah. Interesting. You guys think the difference between, and I'm gonna, since we've got some folks from the other side of the pond on the call, you think the solution that you guys are building, not the solution that Microsoft is building, but do you think organizations in North America use their solution differently than people than organizations in Europe? And what I mean by, do they use it differently? I feel like Europe's probably, I think they've typically been more advanced in their consumption of tools and of pieces of tools, and have chosen to put things together, on their own. Right. In North America, I feel like we're all about the easy button, the give me one sort of way to do all this. And I can, do you guys see that? Do you guys, I mean, I'm sure you guys deal with organizations everywhere, but
I would say, like, for example, when the mobile kind of revolution happened, where everybody started getting cell phones, I used to hear the stories in Europe, people would have two or three cell phones on their hip, right? I think they were just more accepting of the new technology. And like, back to what I was saying earlier, the United States is such a unique place because I think there's a thirst for tech. We love it, but we also have this like love of legacy or traditional stuff, right? There's a reason why we still make Mustangs and Camaros here, right? And Corvettes, right? Because they have this American legacy to them.
Nostalgia.
Right? Yeah, nostalgia. That's the word. Yeah, exactly. It's like we want a modern version of it. We want the bells and whistles, but we still want that nameplate. So it's kind of an interesting mix in the States. That's my take. Where I think other parts of the world, and even Asia, probably even more so, where they're like, when they see new tech, they're like full steam ahead, right? So I also think, just to kind of talk about, and again, this is just my opinion, a lot of the people, when you bring up AI and machine learning and automation, a lot of people get worried, right? Because they're worried about, wait a minute, am I going to be replaced by a workflow, right? And Microsoft's been very vocal about this. We are not coming out with AI to replace jobs. We are coming out with AI to increase productivity so that organizations can even strengthen more the people that they have working for them. So I don't know, Jason, your thoughts?
Yeah, there's actually a pretty well-known, I actually don't even know who said it, embarrassingly, but pretty well-known phrase at this point that goes something along the lines of, you won't be replaced by AI, you'll be replaced by somebody who knows how to use AI, right? It's supposed to improve the contributions that we can make. And ultimately, what I always try to remind myself, any skeptics, people who are feeling nervous about this, is if Microsoft doesn't do this, that doesn't mean it doesn't get done. It just means somebody else does it. And so we're pretty fortunate to be in a position with an ecosystem like this one, where all this Copilot functionality is coming to the fore. Because fundamentally, it didn't have to be us. The productivity gains will be realized at some point. Just what's the brand on the technology that you're using that's providing that productivity improvement for you. I'm pleased that right now we can say it's us, right? It's the Microsoft logo that's going to be able to provide a lot of these gains. So it's cool.
Yeah. It is. Interestingly enough, when something new comes out and you go, okay, look, we've been in the G12 as an organization, had been in the cloud PBX business started in 2011. And I thought when we started G12 that we were super, super late, right? Because I come from the industry and I'm like, oh, cloud PBX, boy, that's, it turns out hadn't really become mainstream until 2016 or something like that, 2017, 2018, right? Yeah. Now it's mainstream. So for new technology to roll out, you often think, oh, the time that it actually takes to get to market in a tool that is actually useful for me as an organization, right? It usually takes some time to trickle down. What's fascinating to me about what's going on and what Microsoft has done is they essentially, to me, they've done with AI what the pandemic did for virtual community, for collaboration. It has sped it up 7-8 years, right? So that now you've got tools that you can adopt tomorrow. Well, that's maybe not tomorrow, but they call it third quarter or whatever it is, right? You got tools that you can adopt and utilize now. Like, and isn't that's mind boggling to think that the acceleration of, of this, I mean, when was OpenAI as October last year, right? 2022, in 1 year, we're going to have actionable tools that organization can utilize to generate productivity, to generate revenue, to save cost, all sorts of things. It's crazy to me.
Yeah. There's a few different flavors or, I don't know, packaging examples of this functionality that we're already seeing. Customers are already getting their hands on it a bit. We have, Teams Premium's Intelligent Recap. We announced that, and we were sort of showing that before OpenAI was just dominating the news cycle. And so, I mean, I can tell you personally, and again, this is a little embarrassing, but it took me quite a while to realize that the functionality that Intelligent Recap is based on is actually OpenAI's generative pre-trained transformer models, right? It was based on that. We weren't saying that. It wasn't in the news cycle yet. So I had to put two and two together for quite some time to arrive at that conclusion. GitHub Copilot is obviously pretty well known and talked about quite a bit. And then the last one is Flow, right? I've got customers coming to me saying, oh, it's asking me to describe what I want to design in Flow to build it here. What is this? I'm like, well, there you go. There's your taste of Copilot, right? There's just a few pieces that are available right now. And that's going to make my job and Doug's job pretty complicated. We've got to keep up with all these different flavors of Copilot. When's it coming in PowerPoint and Word and Excel versus when, business chat is coming out in Teams and all these different Copilot workloads. It's hold on for dear lifetime for us right now.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's going to be a ride. Like, it's definitely going to be a ride. This is why we do what we do, because this is super exciting. And it's like, and when you're in the communication space and you see something like this, it just gets super exciting again for businesses out there. And I'm in a position where, I've owned businesses, I own a business, and this is pretty exciting to me, because I'm like, wow, how do you go and build tools to make your business more productive? And this is why, my perspective is typically a bit different than everybody else's, because I'm like, oh, I could use that for this. I could use that for that. It's like you've got the front, the glossy piece of it going, that's pretty cool. But on the backside, you're like, oh, wow, this is great from a productivity perspective. I could do, I could hire more people to do this other job that I want them to do. What did you need that social interaction, or you need that emotional intelligence to be part of an interaction with a customer, whereas all this other admin stuff, maybe I don't need that, right? So it's like, so anyway, it gets pretty exciting.
Automate all that, stop dealing with that. And I take it back to empathy. I like to really zero in when I can on what the person I'm talking to is dealing with, to give them an example of something they could automate, because at the end of the day, love yourself, like save your own time, value your own time. And automate some of this stuff. That's I always like to take it back to a personal example.
And Jason, the last time you were on the show, I think we kind of were talking about something similar, and you said something that was great in that, embrace that automation, embrace the capabilities, because it frees you up to learn new things, right? You're not doing mundane tasks now. You're free to go learn.
That was for the Cisco techs, man. That was for the Cisco techs.
Yeah,
guys,
but it still applies.
Doug's chuckling.
Yeah. I know I'm excited. I just, and again, Jason knows I love to play with Power Automate. I always make the joke that I'm PL 900 certified and and
I was going to tell the story a little bit ago.
Yeah, it's okay. It's okay. It's just, it just has such a good ring to it. But, I mean, I can tell you, my mind is constantly thinking, like, I've already been thinking, okay, am I going to build, when Copilot comes out, I'm going to build this super complex flow that every time an email comes in that's not from someone at Microsoft, am I going to have Copilot summarize the email, send it over to me in Teams, so I can decide if I even want to go to Outlook and read it, right? Or maybe I'll just tell Teams, go ahead, delete that email. It's okay. And, what I mean? And it'll help me clean out my inbox. It's that kind of stuff.
Or
that's
G12,
just
Doug, or G12. Sorry, go ahead. Sorry.
Of course. But, it's that kind of stuff that's just going to absolutely, like, just how much time do we spend just sifting through data throughout our day? just trying to find out what's the next task to do. One of my biggest pet peeves is getting the email that has been forwarded 18 times and somebody says, "Hey, Doug, what's your thoughts?" And I'm like, well, hold on, let me, scroll through the thing until I get to the bottom, trying to figure out exactly what was the purpose of the email, right? To have something just simply say, hey, they're looking for an answer on this, like, just unbelievable. So I'm excited. I'm excited.
That's very cool. And just a real quick last comment on, or not last comment, but just a comment on this is when we talk about how much data we consume. I've got 3 screens in front of me today. Every day I've got 3 screens in front of me. One's a browser, one's Outlook, and one's Teams. Right. And so it'll be interesting, Doug, when you can create tools that, you get the communications that you want, and that Outlook and that Teams start to become one tool.
Yeah.
I get that question all the time. When are you going to bring email into Teams? And I don't know the answer to that. Sorry, guys.
Yeah, but if AI can recap it for you, like for me, I would love to be able to just get a quick cap on emails as they come in. And the main question I have based on what I do day to day is, do I need to take action? Do I need to respond? I don't even, at a certain level, I'm not even sure I care what the email is about. The first thing I care about before I even click on an email is, am I going to waste my time trying to figure out whether I actually care about this email? And I would love to just be summarized. Maybe every hour I get a summary report of, here's the 80 new emails. Here's the ones you need to respond to, and then break it down to, here's what they're looking for, and then filter out the rest.
And these large language models are really good at that. They're great at sifting through just a wall of text to figure out, is Brandon going to care about this at all?
Exactly. I'm going to have to train it, because most of the time I don't care, especially if it's from Rick. I'm like, oh, another email.
But wouldn't it be, how cool would it be to be, you just got an email from Rick, don't worry about it.
Yeah. Just ignore it. Just ignore it.
There's nothing important. There was nothing important in that.
Actually, I'm going to have AI auto respond at that point. With some snarky comment.
It's going to remind, take the way that I speak in my emails, and then respond to Rick and just let him know, yep, got it. Thanks. Appreciate it.
Yep. Leave me alone.
That's funny. All right, guys. Well, listen, we've hit the top of the hour and a couple past, but that's okay. This has been really, really fun. I'm glad we didn't stick to, typically we have that PowerPoint that kind of walks us through a format. This was really fun to be free flowing and talking about Microsoft Teams and Microsoft Teams Phone. It's an exciting time to be in the business that you guys are in with Microsoft. It's an exciting time for Brandon and I at G12 for the things that we're doing in Microsoft Teams Phone and helping organizations just deliver on productivity. So this has been super fun. I want to thank you guys very much for the time that you guys spent with us. Obviously, Tom Arbuthnot on the other side of the pond, thanks for hopping on and joining us. Ollie from Blue Air, thanks for hopping on and listening with us. We appreciate your attendance as well. Everyone, this has been the 24th episode of Everything Teams Phone Live. We thank you for joining us. You guys have a great afternoon. Have a great weekend, everyone. See you.
Thanks all.
Bye, folks.